and just wanted to get underway. You know, the past week or so has been fantastic as far as what we've been looking at and playing with relative to the upcoming book. And so what I wanted to do was to dive in and give you a couple of ideas, just things that I'm playing around with and looking at relative to the chapter that I'm really diving into, which is all about tracking performance and productivity. And you'll see here this little question I put up: what do you know about what you do? And one of the things that I know comes up time and time again for me in my coaching and even in the seminars, the Q&A aspect of that, is really kind of being a microscope on people's productivity. You know, I know when I was growing up, one of my favorite toys as a kid was a little handheld magnifying glass. And it just was amazing to me that I could hold something that when I looked through it at the other side, it was magnified, it was bigger, it was made more important. And I think that's one of the things that I encourage a lot of people to do relative to their own productivity and performance, is actually take out the magnifying glass and really dive in and take a look at how are the systems and the tools and the processes, you know, my energy during the day, my focus during the day. You know, I'm a big fan of reminding my own self that my attention span is about half my age in minutes. And so this ability of being able to sit down and be productive over a long period of time has a lot to do with how can I hold my focus, how am I maximizing my energy, a lot of things that you've heard me talking about over the years. And so just to, you know, kind of what's current, what's going on these days, 3 things really keeping me busy. Faculty member at the Institute for Management Studies. I'm rolling around the world talking to large groups. I just did a seminar last Tuesday up in Seattle, Washington. We had about 45 people in the room. We had 7 different companies represented. As far as what's coming up, the book is due on August 22nd of this year, and that's set for publication in January 2012. And you know me, you know, my goal is I want to get that book over to them by mid-July so that it comes out in December. But you can count on seeing that within the next 8 months or so. 3 things that I wanted to dive into relative to this particular webinar. The first one is pay attention to what has your attention. And over the next 5, 7, 12 days, I'll encourage you to take a look at these different areas of what I could track, what I could take a look at, what I could dive into.
Unmuted.
I just got a note here from Robin that we don't have any sound. Is my sound back?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. From time to time. So let's just go. You read the blog post where I talked about these 3 areas, so I'd like to just put a little color around and give you a couple of ideas of what we're doing these days. Here's the first one that I'm seeing really show up in people's worlds, is this impact of the interruptive process to productivity. And one of the things that we take a look at is, you know, what's interrupting you? And notice that I say what is interrupting you, not who is interrupting you, because in a heartbeat, you can make a list of the people who interrupt you: your boss, your colleagues, your customers, your clients, the intern, the new hire, whatever that is. What I'm more interested in studying as far as a tracking process is what is interrupting me. And if I can get the what is interrupting me into some kind of a frequently asked questions section, frequent responses section. And that was why on that blog post you saw I gave you a link to the video on email signatures. You know, over a course of a week of seminars, a couple weeks ago I did 5 seminars in 5 days in New York City, and that was for 4 different companies. And what was amazing is by Tuesday and Wednesday, I was so in rhythm, I was so moving that I could almost anticipate the questions that were going to come during the seminar. And then after the seminar, each night I was fielding email and text message questions. And so what I did is I reviewed, I went back and I re-looked at the two system pieces that I've got that help me the most with interruptions. And those two things are auto text on my BlackBerry and email signatures in my email system. And so for those of you who have not pushed on this yet, my immediate kind of suggestion, advice, coaching would be go to your sent items in email and just go back 5, 10, maybe 15 weeks in time and see if you can find any themes, any of the same questions or similar questions that have come to you when you've either gone to your sent items, found a response that you sent to somebody, highlighted the text, copied, brought it back over, and pasted and sent it. For those of you on the call this morning, you'll recognize, and I didn't CC everybody, but the email that you got that I sent you about today's webinar, I made a signature yesterday. So that way, when someone emailed me in asking me for the information, you'll notice, for those of you who emailed that, some of you got a response right away. And it wasn't because I retyped all of that or I went to a website and refound it. I literally, the first time I typed that up to the first person, I stopped, I copied it, I made it into a signature. Now, I will go a little bit further and say, you know, I might have made that an auto text on my BlackBerry, and that just means that I could have done a very quick send from my BlackBerry by typing in a keyword that the BlackBerry would replace all of that text and then send that out right away. Why I didn't do that, I decided to do the webinar yesterday, and the webinar was going to be today. So I knew I wasn't going to be using it a ton away from my desk. Now, as far as the who, as far as the interruptions and what I can do about them, I put this little slide in here about maximizing interruptions. And, you know, I say it with a big smile on my face because I have a lot of people who are trying to minimize how many times they get interrupted a day. And here's what I know. Interruption happens. And people are going to knock on the door, they're going to give us a call, they're going to instant message us, they're going to give us that question that you've heard, if not today, you heard it sometime yesterday where someone says, hey, do you have a minute? Well, they never want a minute. What they're really doing is they're asking you for your time, your energy, your focus, information on how to use a system or a tool. And so what I'll do with folks is I'll encourage them over a period of a couple of days, bring a note card, a 3x5, a Post-it, a 3x3, someplace in your email system, someplace on your computer. It could be a Word document. And what I'll do is I'll write down one person's name on the top of that piece of paper. So I would write down Jody. And then while I'm sitting here working at my desk, anytime I think of something to ask or tell or to check in with Jody, I'll just write it on the list. And I might get through a couple of hours of time at my desk, look over, and all of a sudden I got 4 things that I need to ask her. And at that point, I'll either craft an email and I'll ask her those 4 questions, or I'll go into the other room and say, hey, do you have about 5 or 10 minutes to go over these 4 things? And what we know about interruptions is it actually takes less time overall if I interrupt you 1 time with 3 things than if I interrupt you 3 times with 1 thing. And that kind of leads me to this next topic that I wanted to talk about, which I'm calling MITs, and you'll read about this in a lot of my work, the most important things. Now, these are not tasks, they're not projects, they're not really even events, they're more topics or areas of focus. And so the first thing that I'll do is I'll sit down with a client and we'll pull out a piece of paper or a Word document and I'll ask them to think about them, their world, their work, their life, their community, their environment. And I want you to come up with the 7 to 12 main areas of focus for work. Your 7 to 12 main areas of focus for life. And these 15, 20, 30 things, those become my most important things. So on the work side, I might write down things like presenting skills. I might write something down like the next book. I might write something down like travel. Those are very important to me to do well, to get better at on the professional side. Over on the personal side, you know me, I would write down things like I'm a husband, I'm a homeowner, I'm a triathlete. Now, of those, and if I just took those 6, right, then I can start my day off. I tend to do this the night before for tomorrow, but at the minimum do this in the morning for today. And I'll ask myself, all right, what are the 3 or 4? And that's about it. I don't like to go more than 4, 3, maybe even 2 if it's a big day. And I'll ask myself, what are the 3 or 4 areas I want to be excellent in today? Actually, to the exclusion of these other areas that I may not be excellent in. I was telling you about that week that I had in New York where I did 5 days of seminar back to back. And I knew waking up in the morning that in order to be an excellent seminar facilitator, I was not going to be able to be an excellent triathlete that day. I got a little workout in 3 of those 5 days, but nothing compared to what I would normally do when I was at home, right? When I'm at home, I can spend an hour and a half, 2 hours at the gym to the exclusion of I'm not going to be practicing my seminar facilitation skills. So how that balances back and forth. Now, the reason that I want to track this, and that's the whole topic of this webinar is tracking, is I want to write these things down over 4 or 5 or 7 or 12 days. Because at the end of that cycle, let's just pick right smack dab in the middle, right? Let's say you do this for 7 days, Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday. You look back over those areas of focus that you've chosen for those past 7 days and ask yourself, am I mixing it up? Or am I focusing on the same areas every day? If I get to the end of 7 days and I continually write the same 1 or 2 areas of focus, what does that mean about some of those other 26 or 28 most important things? And so the goal here is to kind of bring to my conscious awareness, what am I choosing to make my most important thing? And then how am I mixing that up over time, over the period of space, if you will. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about before we end today's webinar is the third thing that I would want to track at the end of the day, at the end of a week, at the end of a month, at the end of a quarter. I want to be able to look back and ask myself, where did we experience a success? Where did we win? What did we accomplish today? You know, I'm looking at the theory of productivity as I write more and more in the book and reaching out to my community for coaching and advice. And, you know, I have a conference call tonight with a teacher who's going to help me take a look at some of the economics of productivity. But one of the things that is really interesting to me, based on theory that applies here, is back in 1923, a psychologist by the name of Bluma Zygarnik, she was a Soviet psychologist, she actually studied the impact of short-term memory and what that does to our psyche, what that does to our ability to produce. And with a big smile on my face, I always tell this story, right? Because, you know, 1923, short-term memory and multitasking, what really did they have to multitask? But here's what they proved, and she wrote a paper on this. She was able to prove that we hold on to or we remember what's unfinished more than we remember what we accomplished, what we completed, what got done that day. And if you think about it, it's why at the end of the week when someone says, hey, you know, what did you do this week? Or where did you make progress this week? Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult where if someone said, hey, you know, what meeting did you miss this week? Or what did you not get done? We can bring that to our mind pretty much right away. And relative to productivity and performance, if you remember back just a couple of slides where I showed you that agenda system, right, where I keep track of the things that I want to tell someone later on, I actually had a client a couple of years ago give me this idea, and I've been using it ever since and teaching it ever since. But this woman made an additional agenda bucket for herself. She put a note on her calendar for every Thursday, and every Thursday she had an alarm come on her calendar. That was her trigger. She went over to her agenda, and she wrote down as single-line items the areas that she had moved on, the things that she had accomplished, the work areas and personal areas where she had experienced some success. And she got back to me later that year when she said that she had done her performance review, her annual performance review. And she said, Jason, I went back into my agenda system and I had 50 data points by 50 weeks of what I had accomplished, what I had done, what I had finished. The other thing about tracking this is that I can push it through some kind of a and I use an effort value chart. Some people use an urgent important chart. Probably one of my favorite ways of looking at work and the way that I get things done is I look back or look forward. I can do it either way. But I can ask myself, how much effort is this next activity going to take? And what is the anticipated or perceived value that that's going to bring me? And so at the end of a week, at the end of a day, at the end of a meeting, when I look back on that time spent and ask myself, was it worth it? Was there value here? Was the effort I expended going to get me something in return? Then I can start to take a look at that. And really, kind of as you take a look at your next 24 or 48 hours, my encouragement to you, back to what we had started off with earlier today, is this whole idea of what do you know about what you do? And whether you track your interruptions, whether you track your most important things, whether you track your accomplishments at the end of the day, my real encouragement to you is going to be pause a couple times through the day, a couple times per hour, and just be aware. Be cognizant of where is my attention going? What am I doing as a result of that? As one of my mentors, Marcus Buckingham, would say, how do you feel at the end of whatever it was that you did? And when I'm in my strength, when I'm in my gift, when I'm in my zone, I have a general sense of energy, of kind of a stepped-upness where I can really engage and really get involved in that thing. And I want to say thank you for being here. If you have any questions, shoot those over to me, jason@womackcompany.com. You've got my email address. And I really look forward to exploring this. And obviously, I've got a 4,500-word chapter that I'm writing right now. So anything that you want to share by way of question or win or idea, I'm totally willing to accept that and to dive into that with you. That's it for today. I was thinking of doing another webinar later in the week. If you found some value here, let me know. And also, please let me know how I could involve a couple more of your colleagues should you have anything that you need for me to do for them. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And remember, I'm an email away.